Hello.
Hello, everyone. Hello.
Welcome to another episode of Adventures in Hearsay and
Tomfoolery.
Tomfoolery, the most organized show on whatever platform you're watching this on.
Yeah. Okay, today we're talking about Souls game, but specifically we're talking about PvP in Souls games.
And why it is a blight.
So there needs to be a little preface to this. I dislike PvP. I don't play any PvP game. I don't like the concept of PvP even. You're not as against it as I am.
Not quite now. I play a few PvP games, but I have been avoiding them more recently as well. Though a PvP game is getting its grasp on me, so I
Suggestions or warnings about events to come are dropped.
say. Also, smack that
Yeah, of
unpleasant
course.
person.
Of course. No
Yeah.
maiden.
No maidens.
No maiden. Okay.
Anyway,
So,
we basically go in with PvP sucks and the opinion on one end, and PvP in Souls games has been badly implemented. It has been blight that split the community in half on the other.
yeah. Exactly.
So
Okay.
let's first of all, there are probably one or two people who are watching this, and for those two who probably have played Souls games, let's be honest,
Yeah, probably at least a little
let's
bit.
still explain how the PvP in these games work.
Yes. Please go ahead. You're a lot more experienced in that than I am.
Okay, this is of course different from Souls game to Souls game. Let's go first over how it is handled in Dark Souls, then in Bloodborne, and then in Elden Ring. Demon Souls works very closely to Dark Souls. In Dark Souls, there's a certain state the player can be in. In Dark Souls 1, it's human form. In Dark Souls 2, it's also human form.
Yeah.
And in Dark Souls 3, it's embered, because fire. While you are in that state, you can get invaded by both NPCs and other players.
And you can also invade.
And that, yes, you also need to be human to invade. Though you don't need to be human to be summoned for co-op, which is another big multiplayer bit. In Bloodborne, you can only get invaded while you are either trying to invade somebody or you are currently
Co-oping.
already in multiplayer. Exactly. Bloodborne also has a mechanic that allows you to prevent invaders from showing up. We will get into that probably when we get about how to fix the PvP. And in Elden Ring, it works much the same than in Bloodborne. You need to be in multiplayer already, in co-op, or there's a specific item that also activates it. But there's nothing you can do to prevent invasions except entering a boss room.
Yes. Indeed.
So,
So now,
why do I...
Yeah, go ahead.
First of all, I am less partial to PvP than you are.
Yes.
So, my take is that you either like PvP in this game, in which case you probably enjoy it, or you don't like it, in which case the game would be objectively better if it wasn't there.
Indeed.
The thing is, there's a lot of people say that PvP is the risk you take by doing co-op. And yes, if you didn't have PvP, the game would be a lot easier in co-op.
That is true. But, okay, so my view on PvP in Souls game in general is that it shouldn't be forced on people. It's as simple as that. To me, the fact that it's forced when you try to do co-op, or especially in a...
And to interject here,
Yeah?
just don't play online
Yes,
is
also.
not an argument against that.
Yeah. Because you do skip a nice part of the online experience, which is, the messages, the little interactions. especially in
Jolly Corporation.
yeah, especially in Dark Souls. To me,
Wondrous pose, therefore try thrusting.
PvP on concept wasn't necessarily a bad idea, but that's not what we're going to talk about right now. But to me, it should just not be forced on the player. It should be an option, because I don't think PvP shouldn't exist, because some people like it, and those people are allowed to like it, and it's good that they do. I don't want to suck the fun out of things, but I don't want to be forced into PvP, especially the state of PvP, the way PvP always end up being in almost every Souls game.
Let's get into that later, because I
let's-
first want to say that, first of all, even if it was perfectly balanced and there was nothing at all,
Yeah, even if the PvP was, there wasn't any, for
the
those
most
who know,
perfect balanced,
even if there
immaculate,
wasn't any,
perfect netcode.
even if there wasn't any twinking, for those who know about it, I would still be against the concept of PvP being forced on, everyone.
Yes. And my argument for that is just that it is completely different. Being good at Elden Ring and Dark Souls, like you can't see in gameplay right now, like I'm really bad in this gameplay, it needs a really, really different skill set to be good in PvP.
Yes.
I am alright in PvP by now, but that only happened because I deliberately played PvP.
Yeah.
And I don't like that I need a completely different skill set in order to not be completely useless when an invader shows up.
Yeah. There's also...
I would much rather, when I play co-op, that's something else that more reliably, because you might not get invaded, and something that requires the same skill set. I don't know, red phantom enemies. There's a lot of things you can do, or enemies specifically designed to split you apart. There's options here.
Yes, there's a lot of options besides PvP. I think it would be, for this discussion, interesting to talk about what the concept of PvP was supposed to be, at least in Dark Souls 1.
Okay.
So the concept. So I don't have a paper in front of me. I didn't interview Miyazaki to know exactly, but I know that the concept.
Oh, I'm gonna get toasted.
The concept of PvP invasions was to be another obstacle in the player's path.
Yes.
It was just to be another strong enemy, but this enemy will feel different because it's a real person. And
it's also meant to be a difficult enemy.
yes. However, so that's the concept. And if we look at the concept alone, I don't dislike the idea, especially not in a Souls game, which are pretty punitive game. And having that kind of obstacle, as unfair as it may seem, is still an interesting concept, I think.
Yes.
However, the problem is that the team that works on these and keeps trying to integrate this idea in Souls games and even in Elden Ring, kind of forgot that people like to win on both sides of the equation. And
that's also from the very start why invaders have always been at a
disadvantage.
Yes.
They were supposed to be a threat, obviously.
But they were meant to lose more often than they win.
Yes. However, because of this, people who played PvP and who were invaders, obviously, because they're human, and to be fair, it's very fair for them, they wanted to win. So they started to make specific builds, or even do death runs to be able to get late game gear that would allow them to win more easily. That's what we call
not just twinking.
Yes. Not just that. There's a lot of
the idea is that even if it's not twinking, a player present in the game suddenly turns that into basically the only threat.
Also, yes. Because
a straight up battle is not encouraged, because again, people want to win, and the best shot at winning you have as an invader is to hide between enemies, use them to advantage, which is all good and all, but there's no punishment for overdoing it,
Yeah, no.
As the host being, you waste your time, you waste everybody's time if you don't engage. But like, you can get into a stalemate when neither party is willing to make a move, and it's just bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's get into twinking, because they did a lot to try to fix that, and they still haven't fully managed to do it.
Yeah, so the concept
So-
of drinking is to just basically
Let's
go ahead.
let's start with the earliest, which is the Dark Souls 1 early patches, because I think in the original, you could only invade people who were at a similar soul level than you are, which is the number you improve, like your stats. When you level up using souls, and that improves your stats like strength, dexterity, health, etc.
Yeah.
That number is, especially early on, almost irrelevant. Everything except HP is completely irrelevant. What is far more important is how strong and how upgraded your gear is. And the upgradedness of your gear was not put into consideration. That means at the beginning of Dark Souls 1, I might be talking out of my ass here, but I think you could just get invaded with somebody who had a maximally upgraded weapon and just one-shot you. I think they might have fixed that during Dark Souls 1's lifetime, or they might not have, I don't know. So that was the first problem, that people just decided to not level in order to prey on new players.
Which is...
Then Dark Souls 2 managed to fix that problem in a mechanic that everybody hated. Dark Souls 2 did not have a drinking problem. Dark Souls 2 had soul memory, which means that you can only ever have received so much XP before you stop matching with players. So if you finish the entire game at level 1, it doesn't matter that you're still level 1, you still have got a lot of XP even if you never leveled up. So you can't match with players. That also applied to co-op, and people honestly really hated that, and rightfully so. For co-op, it really wasn't nice.
Yeah.
Dark Souls 3, one would think that they solved the problem, because they finally stopped the weapon level was part of the matchmaking. So you couldn't just upgrade your weapon to Oblivion and one-shot people. But Dark Souls 3 had its own issues. A, it didn't track how upgraded your healing items were. That means you could get invaded by somebody who had better and more healing items than you at the early part of the game. And two, there's certain... Let's go into more details of twinking, because I already mentioned early on, every levels except in HP don't matter at all.
Yeah.
So if you want to do PvP and be good at the early level, you just level HP as max as you can to still be in the same level bracket, and dump everything else and choose a weapon that you can wield with those stats. You upgrade that weapon as high as you can. But somebody who just plays the game casually will not do that. They usually either level up their damage stats too early, which who doesn't do that? Or they first get the base stats for a weapon they know they will need and still have a lot less HP. And another thing, there is items that you can get late in the game. In Elden Ring, that would be the Sore Seals or Scar Seals.
Yeah.
That give you stats for a downside. The one I'm mostly talking about is the one that gives you plus 5 stats in HP, stamina, and I don't know exactly what else. But it gives you a lot of stats for a downside that is basically you take 10% more damage. By the time you get those charms in the game, in PvE, they are alright. But they fall off later in the game because the 10% damage taken outweighs the stats you gain. But early on, when you're not meant to have those charms, they are quite broken, especially in PvP. On top of that comes consumables, which are also not factored in at all, that apply a flat damage to the weapon. So, even in Dark Souls 3 or Elden Ring, where it should be perfectly balanced, somebody comes in with gear that gives them a statistical advantage that they have, with a build that is more optimized, and buffs that you don't have access to that are, they pretty much double the damage of your weapons for the point of the game. You can't balance for that without going insane, so...
Yeah. And...
You can't fix that problem. You really can't unless you do something like Soul Memory, but even then, it's only a band-aid fix, because you can still pick up the gear and just move it from one character to another via a friend.
Yes. And, yeah. The result of all this, of course, is that especially, I mean, it's annoying for everyone, in a way. But there are some people who enjoy PvP and even enjoy the challenge, you know? But for new players, particularly, this is not a good experience. I know when I started playing Dark Souls, it was very late, you know, in the life of Dark Souls. Dark Souls 3 was already out when I tried to play Dark Souls 1. But there were still people invading. And at this point, you know, I was brand new to the game. The game had been out for dozens of years. And so the people who do PvP at this point are people who have hundreds of hours into the game. They're pretty much experts. There's no fair fight in this. And as a new player, it doesn't feel like a challenge, just feels like bullying.
I think somebody even did some testing in Dark Souls 3 where it's basically statistically impossible for you to beat a really optimized Twink build.
Yeah. Yeah, because when you see
they deal twice the amount of damage that you deal, they have better healing items, and your weapon will break before you kill them.
Yeah. Now, there's the concept of PvP being used, you know, as a sort of a counter to co-op. And some people will defend that, you know, otherwise the game will be too easy. That's a question that is a little more in the realm of, you know, opinions, in my humble opinion. But
it is one I share, though, that you need something to counteract the co-op strength.
I get it. However, the way I look at it, there's two things. First, this is not an MMO, okay? This is a single-player game. Every RPG out there has a way to break the game. It's just how it is. Games are really difficult to make. It's impossible to optimize every little possible thing that players will come up with. Every game has its cheese. Why would it be so bad that some people could have a slightly nicer experience than others when playing co-op? That's the first thing.
It reminds me of the entire no spirit summons idea.
The only thing
that is called a challenge run.
The only reason I see this is because you want to kind of limit the amount of people that can accomplish something, but why? Again, if this was an MMORPG, the question would be different, right? Because it's different player competing in real time, but here it's just people playing their little solo game with their friends. Why is it so important that they get punished for playing the game in a slightly easier way? To me, it doesn't really feel fair or just to anyone. And
you could also just adjust the enemy's AI a bit, or add specific enemies that are there to counter co-op.
That would ask for a lot of work, but so does adding PvP to your game. So to me,
especially forced PvP.
So to me, like you said, like just changing the AI, maybe adding more enemies, I think there are ways, or just making the AI better. I'm sure, for example, in Night Rain, which is coming out pretty soon, next month, you know, the bosses and enemies will be built for dealing with more than one player, and that will result in much more challenging fights, even though there's more people. And that would be the solution of a proper co-op system.
I also think Monster Hunter does those battles a lot better with how sweeping and big the attacks are.
Yes. My point is there are options besides using PvP. And here's the thing. As someone who's played, I mean, we've both together played Dark Souls 2, Dark Souls 3, and Elden Ring together.
We haven't played Dark Souls 2.
We've played a bit of Dark Souls 2.
We have?
We a little bit.
I-
Well,
a wee little bit.
just the beginning, and then we got bored of it. But we did play a little bit.
Yes.
Invasions.
But don't worry, we are still experts on Dark Souls 2.
Yes, of course. I played like 2 hours of it. I'm an expert.
All right.
It's better.
Let me pull it up.
It's better than some journalists.
You got through the tutorials. I played 8.1 hours of Dark Souls 2.
I think I played more than 2 hours because I did play the game on release. I was hyped for it. But anyways, sidetrack. As players who played co-op on those games and had a lot of fun doing it, because listen, I played a lot of Elden Ring, but I probably wouldn't have played as much if I didn't play with you. Every invasion except one in Elden Ring have been just a waste of time. It was just we stop what we're doing, we're running back to the fire, and we're waiting to get to either kill the person or get killed. It didn't really matter the result, because personally,
At least
even
early on.
Yeah, no matter if I won or lose, I'm having the same amount of fun, which is 0. It's a thing. It's not about losing. It's not like I hate PvP as long as I'm losing, but the moment I win, I love it. No, even if I win at a PvP fight, I still feel like, wow, we wasted 20 minutes. That's great.
And that's where I have a more differentiated opinion. I hate getting invaded before like level 50. Because if I get invaded before level 50, it's a crapshoot.
Yeah.
It entirely dependent on whatever my opponent is doing. If I get invaded by a random dipshit with a club, as on screen, it will be fun. I will probably get my ass handed because they know how to play dipshit with a club and I don't. But it's a fair fight. It's skill that decides. If I get invaded by a twink, it's just going to be a grinding slog and I would rather throw myself off a cliff.
Yeah.
And I often do. But once I hit like level 70, 80, when I have my own build assembled enough to be more functional, and also have a few of those really powerful items as myself, then the dynamics flips. Suddenly the fact that you are 2 against 1 is the deciding factor, and once you hit those level ranges, aggression is the option because you can just body the invader.
Yes.
You can just absolutely.
You do have the number.
Wreck the ass.
You do have the number.
You have the number advantage. You are more able to chase. You are able to just be more aggressive. You can have each other's back. You are at advantage.
Yes.
And once you reach that point, it becomes fun for me. I do enjoy those moments of chaotic invasions. And yes, I do like it when the invaders play smart. To a limit. I also think they shouldn't just be a complete coward and hide behind all the enemies.
Yeah, which sometimes they
But
do
like-
without any shame.
Yes. Oh, here we can see me parry fishing like mad.
But the problem that I have also with the system of PvP, and the one thing that I wanted to put up is that a lot of people have been complaining about the PvP in Elden Ring. Because you're always at even more of a disadvantage because you can only get invaded whether I think it's only when you are in certain dungeons you can get invaded even if you're alone. I'm not sure. No, not at all.
You need to have a certain item activated, then you can
yeah.
get invaded.
But yeah, it's only when you are basically, unless you have that item, it's when you're co-op. So you're always at a disadvantage, and a lot of PvP players complained about this. And this is my other argument against forced PvP. Because if you could just opt in the PvP experience, you could have a really fair fight. You wouldn't need to underpower someone or the other. You could actually have a fair PvP experience, and I think that would be enjoyable, more enjoyable at least for people who like PvP, unless the only thing they want to do, of course, is swing and kill new players, because in that case you're just an asshole, okay? And I don't think you should have fun.
Let's actually go through it. In Dark Souls 1, the only advantage that the host has compared to the invader is
you have more
none,
healing.
I think.
Don't you have more healing than the invader in Dark Souls 1?
Maybe. Yeah. Let's say you have more healing.
think
That's
you're
not a
more-
big advantage. That's not a big advantage in a rather fast-paced fight, especially given everything you can do.
Yeah, and
Dark
especially
Souls 2.
the builds that are made to,
Yeah.
destroy you in one or two hits, so you don't have time to heal.
Yes, Dark Souls 2 is very much the same. And then Dark Souls 3, you have less max HP, and as soon as you're out of the first area of the game, it's much more likely you're facing somebody with a co-op partner. Because the matchmaking does seem to prefer that.
Yeah.
In Bloodborne, you are guaranteed to be against somebody with a co-op partner.
Yeah.
You have less HP, and importantly, Bloodborne blocks invasions before level 35.
Yeah.
And then in Elden Ring, you have less HP, and you're guaranteed to be against somebody who's with a co-op partner. So what do we see? Over time, the invader has gotten more and more disadvantages, and I think, this is me, it's because the invasion system is flawed, because people are trying to win too much. The invader is not meant to win so often.
Yes. That brings back to what we were saying at the beginning and the original concept of invasions, which was to be an obstacle to the player. And I think, and I believe we agree on that the problem is the win condition. The win condition of
I
an
also
invasion,
think the basic idea
yes.
is not great either.
But for me, the idea that the win condition is to kill the other player makes it so that you want to do that. An invader, even if you put up the best fight possible, if you get defeated as an invader, you get no reward. Am I wrong?
You even get a little punishment.
Yeah. That should not be how it works. If you are indeed supposed to just be an obstacle, first, I believe your win condition should not be just kill the player. It should be one of the option maybe, but you should distract the player, make them use a certain amount of item. That would be a lot more interesting, because it would be an instant, we have to fight and one of us has to die, because as the player being invaded, it's not really fun, because it's important to remember that an invader doesn't lose anything.
Not really, no.
You maybe if you use an item to invade, you lose that item, but you don't lose souls, you don't lose time. A player that is playing...
You lose your souls if you die.
Oh, you do?
You drop them.
Oh, fair enough. I don't know.
But you can get them back quite easily, because you're only invading in areas you have already beaten yourself.
Yeah. The thing is, as a new player, you might be hours into a dungeon. For example, in Elden Ring, I know one time where we kept getting invaded, and it was awful, was the quote-unquote hidden legacy dungeon, which is really difficult, and we were several hours in. I had an enormous amount of souls, and it had been hours since I'd saved, and I just didn't want to lose. I was playing very carefully, and if I had died against a monster, it would have been a thing. But getting invaded by someone who could literally one-shot me this far into the game, it wasn't fun. It wasn't interesting. It was just I kept just disconnecting. And this is something that a lot of PvP players complain about. How people just disconnect, or just camp the fire, or just jump off a cliff. But this is what this system, this really blind system, in my opinion, pushes you to do, because dying by a mistake I made is a thing, but dying because I couldn't hold up to someone who has 500 more hours in Elden Ring than me, not nearly as fair.
Yeah. And that's also why I said that the win condition is not really the solution.
It's not the only solution, but it's part of what could be the solution, I think.
Because the invasion community in Dark Souls is largely hostile and a good bit toxic.
Unfortunately,
people don't invade people because they want to have a fair fight. People aren't even invading each other because they want to cause a little playful mischief.
No.
And that
I think it was in Dark Souls. I don't remember which one, but I think in Dark Souls 3 in Dark Souls 3 specifically there was a sort of Coliseum thing where you could go and do PvP fights, like genuinely, you know, like pin yourself against another player.
That has been a thing since Dark Souls 1, at least in the DLC.
Oh, yeah, well, DLC. And, like, this is where people who love PvP would go. But that's the kind of thing that needs to be more, you know, put up front. That's why I think it shouldn't be forced. Because when it's forced, you're also forcing people who don't want to interact with PvP to get into it. And that leads to a situation where basically people bully new players or players that are not as good as them. Because, you know, I know people who have a lot of time in Elden Ring, for example, and still suck. Like me. I have more than 150 hours in Elden Ring, but I suck. Dear God, I suck. So I do agree with you on that too. Is that
invites bad player interaction? It brings the worst out of everybody. But whenever people bring up that it should be optional or opt-in, people get worried that but then nobody will play online anymore. Yeah, but so you're basically admitting that you do this to make people suffer.
The thing I believe is that even though there is you know, a community for PvP, there are an amount of people who want to do PvP. It is a very niche amount of people. You know, in the grand scheme of things, it's still a good amount of people. It's a I don't know what word I want to use, but you know, the amount of people that matter. But it's still a significant. Significant thing, yeah. But it's not the majority of people.
No, absolutely not.
And that's why there's this result of bullying, because I think there are people who genuinely want to have good PvP, and you can meet them. You know, we've met them. There's some invasions that are almost liked, because I fought someone that was being fair. And, you know, when I lost, I didn't feel frustrated. I still felt annoyed.
I played a lot more Elden Ring multiplayer than you do.
You did, yes.
And I will say that by the time you reach the end game,
yeah,
DLC, I would say a solid. The people who twink and invade early on are usually not actually that great. They just need that statistical advantage.
Yeah.
And you meet a lot of those people who just run in and get bodied by 3 people. Yeah. But I had a good few fights, and like I play a lot of co-op. I have been forever a Sunbroke, Get Summoned, Jolly Corporation, and this stuff. But the thing is, if an invader shows up and just like stands in front of me, I will usually, if the host and the other summons are okay with it, I will do a fair duel with them. Yeah. No healing, no nothing. I know the etiquette, and I will hold myself to that as long as they do.
Yeah.
And like I had genuinely a lot of fun during those fights, because by that point, the number advantage isn't there. Me against them is an absolutely fair fight.
Yeah. Yeah, now...
But like, if I get summoned as like a hunter, or the host clearly doesn't want me to do a fair duel, oh no, I will absolutely gladly body that guy.
Yeah. Yeah, because like I said, no matter what, like the kind of duel that Mount talked about, I had a couple of those over my time in Souls game in general, and even though they were more enjoyable, like I said, I just don't like PvP. I don't. Even if it was the best PvP experience of my life, I just don't like it, and it's something I don't want to engage with. And if you force me to engage with it, even if the individual is being respectful, I'm not gonna be. I'm gonna run away. I'm gonna throw myself off a cliff. My point is that you don't have a good time, because I'm not either, basically. There was an article.
And why would you want to force somebody like that to do PvP? It's not making anybody.
It's not nice for me, and it's not nice for people who like PvP. And like, despite not liking PvP myself, I want people who play PvP to have fun. I do. So that's why I'm saying, put them against each other. Make it a opt-in thing, whether through an item or just a menu button, so that PvP can be without compromise, without someone being weaker than the other, and, you know, fair fights.
I would also be absolutely okay with making invasions, with making summoning somebody without PvP a bit more expensive.
Yeah.
Not really a thing in Elden Ring, because summoning somebody is basically free.
Yes.
But like, give an option that makes it
And
a viable option to make it free.
yeah. And if the idea of two people having fun and playing the game in a slightly easier fashion than you did really irks you so badly, you know what? Disable achievements, whatever, because we just want to have fun, really.
Yes. I mean,
You need to understand that even if we don't do co-op, there are mods that exist that just destroy the difficulty of Souls game. We can use those.
On mods that don't completely destroy the difficulty of Souls games. For those of you who agree with us, a shout out to the Elden Ring Seamless Co-op mod.
Yes.
For being absolutely great.
The Seamless Co-op mod is amazing. It's exactly everything I and a lot of people wanted out of, the co-op in Elden Ring. It's great.
Yes.
And it's, I believe it's now come to Dark Souls 1 too. They're currently working on a Dark Souls 1 Seamless Co-op as well.
Oh, it's important to note, by the way, that in Dark Souls 1, the community developed a tool that allowed you to selectively refuse connections.
Yeah.
Because hacking and drinking was such a big issue. Hacking mostly, but still.
Yeah. And to finish, I did want to bring something up, because Souls games are not the only games that introduced, forced PvP.
Oh, you're gonna bring up Deathloop?
Yes, I'm going to bring up Deathloop.
I wanted to bring up Deathloop.
Deathloop had a system like this, where you play as the main character Cole, but you in the main game, offline, you're fighting against another character that through time loops and things, and she can kill you, which will restart the time loop you're currently in. And there's an online mode for this, where the other character, I forgot her name, I'm very sorry, will be played by another player. The thing is, this mode was extremely not popular, and to the point where someone made an article, and I remember that article because I read it from beginning to end. It was an extremely condescending article from a PvP player that liked to invade people, trying, again, very being very condescendingly trying to convince other people to get invaded. And why? Because people who got invaded didn't have fun. You're progressing the game and you're also building your character, and the thing is, there is a major difference between skill, it's the same in Dark Souls and Elden Ring, there's a major difference between skills and items that are going to be good for PvP and good for PvE. And when you're playing a game that is, centrist toward PvE, like Elden Ring, like Dark Souls, like the game we're just talking about and that I forgot the name of,
Deathloop?
You need to have, if you want to have a chance against that other character, you basically need to have prepared a PvP build. And most people who were playing the game were just having fun, in the sandbox of the PvP part of the game, so they were not prepared. And they would get easily killed, and as a result, what they would do, they would just go offline. Because that was the easier solution. Because the problem with the PvP mode wasn't necessarily that it existed. I'm sure some people really enjoyed it. Some people probably played it with friends, and it led to some great moments. The problem with it was, again, that it was forced. That you would take anyone, even someone who had no interest in participating in that sort of PvP, and you force them against someone who is already prepared and ready to take on that person. And it led to a lot of new player bullying.
I also do think that there's quite a bit of nostalgia connected to Elden Ring and Souls games PvP. Because
Yes.
I'm quite sure that if you play one of those games on release when nobody has any idea what they're doing, getting invaded is pretty cool, because that person has played a tiny bit different, they have seen different parts of the world, they have slightly different upgrade materials, but most importantly, they don't know the OP shit yet.
I mean, when we started, because He was.
We
Really
got invaded.
You were really hyped you were really hyped for this game. So we started playing on release, and you started playing before me. But the first invasions we had were more okay because of that phenomenon. It was the really, really beginning, and it wasn't as bad. It was just, another guy trying to get through the game and just trying out invasions, because there's also a few quests, one quest at least, that asks you to invade people.
By a very club to the face kind of guy.
Yeah. And it was nice. There was also a really good invasion that we had, which had nothing to do with aggression. Someone that had a turtle themed armor.
Yes.
That invaded us in a dungeon and just kept dropping cooked turtlenecks.
Oh yeah, pickled turtlenecks.
Pickled turtlenecks, yes. And that was really fun. I'm not gonna lie,
yes.
That was really fun. But yeah, the conclusion of this is not that PvP shouldn't be a thing. Absolutely not. People love PvP and they're allowed to love PvP, and they should have games to enjoy this. But it shouldn't be forced on everyone, because the result of doing this is just making PvP worse for basically everyone. And
to everybody who right now wants to say, but PvP is part of the Souls franchise, no, it isn't.
It's an addition. It's something that is on top of it.
It's an addition.
It's not necessary. And
otherwise the game would be online only and you couldn't even play offline.
Yeah. And finally, very importantly, to the few people who like to use the argument that PvP players are the one who keep the game alive, that sort of shit. First of all, the people who make From Software the most money, the most amount of money, is not the hardcore gamers. Sorry. You guys are a minority. That is the truth. The majority of... When you look at achievements on Steam, for example, you'll notice that I think even I don't remember which achievements there are, but it's very likely that starting from the second boss, 50% of players didn't even beat him. And that's a thing. Casual players, like it or not, are what makes the majority of the revenue of a game like Elden Ring. All the people who buy the game, play a few hours, and never finish it. Or maybe will finish it years later. The reality is, if Elden Ring was an online game, with a subscription, you might have a point. But it's not the case. It's a one-time purchase game with maybe one DLC. And Elden Ring, From Software only get money when you buy the fucking game. After that, they don't get anything. It doesn't matter if you keep the PvP of the game alive for 15 years. They already got paid. They're not getting anything from you killing noobs on Dark Souls 1.
Also, there's a quite significant corporation scene that also does exactly the same, which is about as useful for From Software.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not just PvP.
No. The idea that you keep a one-time purchase game alive but just playing it is just plain old wrong.
Yeah.
It's just that obviously From Software like the games they're making. They like their community. And of course they want to keep the game alive for as long as possible. But, it doesn't mean you're helping them by playing the game for 20 years.
So yeah, how would we actually fix that shit though?
Well, we had a talk
we
about
want
this.
PvP.
Yeah.
PvP should be allowed to stay, but it should be optional with alternatives that might be still easier, because let's be honest, a player is probably the most difficult opponent you can have in one of those games unless you heavily nerf them. And yeah, so some other objective. If we keep the PvP aspect alive, but we had, I think, the idea that the win condition is something else, like an idea I had just now that is kind of a refinement of what we talked about before, is deal in a certain amount of player, make deal a certain amount of damage to the other player or have them heal a certain amount of HP. And that would, I don't know, trigger a certain timeout where like 5 seconds later you get banished back to your world. So you can still rush them down and kill them, but like if you manage to get into a skirmish and you really hurt them, that is your win condition and you get sent home with your prize, even if you don't kill them.
Yeah. The idea is to basically turn it into an alternate game mode, in a way, where your objectives are just different. The objective is just to make a mess, be a little goblin. And I think, you know what? The funniest thing is, like I said, I don't like PvP, but that form of PvP, I might actually enjoy. Because
also, keep an arena, of course.
Yes, keep an arena for the people who want to just go on one-on-one fights. Because
also
they have fun.
Allow the host to decide what they want in their game.
Yeah.
If they want to duel the invaders to death, do that. If they don't want any PvP at all, then no PvP. And if they want some sort of hybrid solution, do that. Like, if you get invaded, I would also say you get to choose who you're invading to between those two.
Yeah.
And if you're getting summoned as a summon, I also would give the same selection to that. Though I personally, as a summon, I would not care. As a summon, I love doing PvP. Because I have nothing to lose.
Yeah. But there's also a bit of reality where we have to be a little realistic, which is, all those fixes, quote unquote, they take a lot of development time.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, the question is,
I also, for the record, think that Bloodborne did a very good job.
Yes.
Keeping. I had never had a twink in Bloodborne because it's not really possible.
Because the invasion starts too late, anyways, and because you also have the option to fight against it.
And thirdly, there are no. The way that equipment works in Bloodborne is different.
Yes.
The blood gems are percentages.
Yes.
You can get really. Oh, and here's a little snarky one. There is no inventory trading in Bloodborne. That means if you want OP gear, you have to get it yourself.
Yes.
And it's funny how that removes the people drinking.
It's a lot less easy suddenly. But yeah.
Yeah.
As good as the solution was we put up, and I do think some of them are really good, it might not be possible, even for a big studio. And it becomes, what are you willing to sacrifice? Because at their core, no matter how we put it, Souls game are solo game. They have some community interactions, but at the end, it is a solo experience. So I guess it's up to From Software to see where they want to go from here. And I'm actually curious to see what they will do, because, the arrival of Night Rain shows that they at least want to experiment with some Night Rain, and also the other one that comes on Switch 2.
The Duskbloods.
The Duskbloods. They seem to want to experiment with this idea. And
yes.
I'm welcome to that. Like I said, I have no interest in PvP, but I want to see them experiment. I want to see what they can do.
Yeah, same. I'm really curious about Duskbloods. Night Rain, I don't think will have any PvP. I'm glad about that.
And that's why I will play it.
But Duskbloods will be more focused about PvP. It has been described as a PvPvE game, which no other Souls game has been described as so far.
Yeah. So I think.
So I'm curious, what will they do with it?
Yeah. And the thing is, I do love the Souls series. I love all the weird shit it did. And I really believe the team at From Software to be able to do something amazing with it. Because as much as I gripe about PvP, I still have hundreds of hours in a lot of Souls games. I still love those games. And the reason why I'm so vocal about it is because I want to see them get better, not worse.
Yes. And nobody can tell me that the reason they play Dark Souls is the PvP.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, there are a few people out there where that might be true, but
it's definitely not the majority of, especially if you look at something in Dark Souls 1. Nobody
can tell me that the main appeal of the Souls game is the PvP. The netcode is tolerable at best. The balancing is alright. And I'll be perfectly honest, the game is just not designed to be PvP.
Yeah. But yeah.
You can even see them, like, people were mad that they didn't have PvP in Sekiro. But, like, it wouldn't have worked.
No. No, it's even more of a solo experience in that game.
Mostly because the combat system would not work at all in PvP.
No, yeah. Especially with their shoddy...
Yes. It's... You can't balance the... There's no stamina bar in Sekiro.
No. Also,
That means either the attacker is at advantage, because parrying is too difficult, and one of the two main ways of interaction is completely pointless, or attacking is pointless because parrying is too easy, and therefore neither of the players are attacking because they will just get deflected and lose the interaction.
yeah, it's just gonna be two people parrying constantly.
Just the sword wiggle.
Just a sword wiggle.
Yeah, and like,
Yeah.
of course it doesn't work, because like, I personally think that the key to this all is make bosses and enemies that know how to handle two targets.
Yes.
Because there are bosses like Melania. Okay, Melania is a bad example because Melania is still a problem with multiple people. Let's take Lady Maria from Bloodborne.
Yes.
Lady Maria is my favorite boss from that game, and I will be perfectly honest, that boss fight is a complete joke as soon as you summon somebody.
I mean, a lot of boss fights in Bloodborne, like even some of the most difficult boss fight, like Lady Maria or even Orphan of Cause, are just a joke. Even Orphan of Cause, it's not that easy, but compared to fighting it solo, it's a lot easier.
Yeah, it's just...
But yeah.
These enemies don't know how to handle multiple opponents.
And you can tell.
And
you can see it in the AI. You can see sometimes how the AI just pivots to go towards the other player because suddenly that player gotta grow.
And I think Elden Ring already got a bit better at it.
A bit better, yes.
But like, it's still nowhere near good enough. They need...
But I mean,
I also think just randomly switching targets is bad, like fucking
Yes.
Can I spoil the final boss of the DLC? It's been long enough, right?
Listen, we're yeah, go ahead.
Radahn, at the final boss of the DLC, has the knack of randomly switching targets mid what looks like a combo string, and he hurts. So, especially if you're playing like a mage, who like in a summon situation usually likes to hang back and chuck magic, you need to be extremely careful because you never know when the boss might just decide to come over and smack you after like a 500-meter dash. No, that's not the solution. Have attacks that you can identify from far away, that you know will target not the primary focus.
Yeah.
Like, or do it a bit like Monster Hunter, limit the range and have attacks that just do wide sweeps and hit all around the enemy.
Yes. But...
And I also Dark Souls 2 did that, and I think it's a great idea. Have enemies while in co-op that only exist while in co-op, while you're alone, you I don't know, specifically decide to fight them, like the Hide Knights maybe.
Yeah. That's a good concept too.
Yeah, and make those enemies, I don't know, either if they activate on their own, make them only focus the summons and invulnerable to the host. Make an enemy that splits in two and everybody can only fight one of those versions, not both.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's creativity you can use there that isn't
Definitely.
Make them extremely overtuned. Like players are.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But don't worry.
Oh, and for the love of God, if you do force player interaction, limit it for the early level, because it's never been good.
Yes, that is definitely. Bloodborne had the right idea on that.
Yes.
But yes.
And Bloodborne even has 2 areas where you get invaded.
Yes.
Without
the
co-op.
nightmares.
Yes. But you can turn that off. It's a death run if you do get invaded, and you suck at PvP, like me.
Yeah. Or me.
But like once you deal with the source of the invasions, it's gone, and it doesn't respawn. It does respawn if you go into multiplayer and you need to do it again. But like, it is a solution. And
Yes.
go play Bloodborne.
Bloodborne is good. You will go play it. But yes, you are of course allowed to disagree with all this and go into the comments and tell us to get good.
Yes.
It's just that I will ignore you because I haven't touched a Souls game in a while now, and that probably won't change until the Bloodborne PC port, which obviously will arrive very soon.
Tomorrow for sure.
Along
You
with
see, I have the
Silksong.
even better. Hey, Silksong has a release window. I have it even better because I don't even read the fucking comments at all.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't read them. I think I would have gotten it anyway. I would have gotten a notification, but that's it for this episode of Hearsay in
Adventures in Hearsay.
Hearsay and Tomfoolery.
Yes.
Hope you liked that episode.
And we'll see each other again in 2026.
Maybe.
Maybe. Might be later.
We'll see what we can do. Anyways, bye everyone.
Bye.